Wait. Okay, hold up. You're telling me the Russian agent is complaining about being cold in Egypt? She's from Russia. I get that the desert gets cold at night, but she's from Russia.
So this is where this movie starts to be a real drag for me, because Bond and Anya end up in a boat, and it's real sappy, and they're like, oh, survival training, like, oh, in Russia we learn we have to keep warm by sharing body heat, and James Bond is like, do you mean sex? And she's like, yeah, totally. And I was like, oh, so sappy, and it's just, another like cool female character just falling for James Bond like they always do.
Triple X turns out to be just as slutty as Bond. Her lover died like 48 hours before, and she's about to hook up with Bond. Oh, whoa, no, she knocks him out and steals his stuff.
And then she knocks him out with like gas in a cigarette or something, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Or so I thought.
Oh, James Bond, always getting roofied.
So they end up getting to a boat where they make out, and then she gasses him and steals the microfilm with the plans on it.
Then he ends up in the Valley of the Kings, nowhere near Cairo.
He wakes up in Abu Simbel, which, just FYI, is like another 3 or 4 hour plane ride south from Luxor. And
if you look on a map, it's a 13-hour car ride to the Abu Simbel temple from, let's just pick downtown Cairo. Who really cares?
It's actually in the opposite direction from Cairo.
Where, surprise, M has an office.
Wait, what?
Because of course he does. It's not a submarine, it's, an ancient Egyptian temple, so I'm sure they just let him set him in office wherever he wants.
So Bond wakes up and he is in like some Egyptian catacombs, and Q Branch is all set up there, and M is there, Moneypenny's there, and so are the Russians, because the British Secret Service and the Russians are working together on this one.
Okay. So M doesn't just have an office on a submarine and in a sideways derelict ship. He also just so happens to have an office in an Egyptian pyramid, complete with Moneypenny.
But anyway, they have this really cool KGB and MI6 base in the bowels of the temple at Abu Simbel.
I guess the crazy thing about these moments is that it's just all so casual. It's not the weirdest thing ever.
When you're inside this temple, you can see the painted hieroglyphs on the wall, and that's what this really looks like, to the point where I couldn't tell if they built a really elaborate sound set for this, or if they just were like, whatever, it's like the Wild West, it's the 70s or whatever, you can just move our cameras and stuff into the actual ancient Egyptian temples and shoot something. Because it really looks like this. All those stuff was really painted on the inside. Even the hieroglyphs themselves were all painted very, very detailed, and it's really amazing to look at. Everyone then tours Q's lab. That's actually really fun. There's a really awesome sequence with Q Branch where they're going through all their cool and weird gadgets.
They have the most random gadget there, including a railgun serving tray. I'm not really sure how beneficial that would be.
Also, it seems pretty unethical, to have Q set up his lab full of explosives and weaponry at an archaeological dig site in an ancient Egyptian pharaoh's tomb. There's a lot of things wrong with this picture. That belongs in a museum. Anyway.
Okay, so they examine the microfilm that they got from Jaws, and it's incomplete. However, it includes a clue.
And now Triple X and Bond have to work with each other, where they get into a complete pissy match about who knows the most random of all the facts and data, to the amusement of both M and Gogol.
So he's got to hang out with Agent Triple X in a more official capacity. There's a cool scene in here where they're doing a briefing, and she and James keep trying to show each other up, which one of them knows more about random world facts and stuff. But it's fun. It's cute that they're having a spy measuring contest.
Imagine them with the internet. They would be insufferable, like Archer. Oh, and this team-up is totally the plot of Man from U.N.C.L.E. East and West teaming up.
When they examine the microfilm, they find out that it was made in Italy, and it points towards Carl Stromberg, the richest man in the world.
Carl Stromberg? But he's the richest man in the world. I mean, who else could afford a secret underwater base?
He's a very rich mogul, billionaire, and he works out of Sardinia, and MI6 and the KGB decide that to find these subs, these two agents are going to have to work together to try to track him down.
Okay, let's talk about this train scene.
They take a train to Sardinia.
For some reason, they throw Bond on a train and a girl again, this being the third time in the series.
There's a scene on a train where James tries to woo the girl, And he's like, come on. And she's like, nope, I'm not having it. So he's like, all right, I respect your boundaries. I'm just going to leave. And he goes in the next room, and then she's getting all changed and stuff, and she opens her closet, and there's Jaws in the closet.
And they get ambushed by Jaws in the train. He's hiding in this very tiny closet, and the questions are just endless, right?
How long was Jaws in that closet?
Like, how long was he hiding there? He's too big for this closet. Like, this is what is going on here.
Probably my favorite moment in this whole film is during a fight with Jaws.
As they're fighting, you really get a feel for how gigantic this man is. He is so much bigger than the two people that he is fighting. He barely fits in the train car.
At some point in time during this fight on the train, he throws some type of a food tray at Jaws, and they show a scene where Jaws just grabs the food tray and then takes a bite out of it and then charges back towards Bond.
His hands are the size of James Bond's head, right? It makes for this great battle sequence. He beats up Barbara Bach, he throws Bond around.
He picks up a lamp, he smashes the lamp, and he electrocutes Jaws by applying the current straight to his metal teeth.
Bond eventually gets him by breaking a lamp and using the exposed electrical cabling to shock Jaws' teeth.
And so he comes out, and then James hears this big fight scene, and tussle, and he breaks a light bulb on a lamp and then stabs Jaws in the metal teeth with the exposed electrical circuits from the light bulb, and it causes Jaws to be like...
Jaws ambushes them. Jaws gets his face electrocuted, and then Jaws gets thrown out of train.
Then kicks him out a window.
And then James kicks him out the window, just like he did back in Live and Let Die, because this movie is just made up of things from other James Bond movies.
Jaws looks so disappointed after getting kicked off that train. I almost feel bad for him.
Then Bond goes off and hooks up with Ringo's wife.
And then the spies hook up. Kind of like one of those, you saved my life, let's sex, and then saxophone music.
Cue the sax music.
And then the girl's like, oh my god, I was so scared you saved me. And he's like, yeah, I did. You want to do it now? And she's like, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. Because James Bond is the worst.
I do like how Jaws adjusts his tie after he gets thrown out of the train. It's like, I'm invincible, but I'm not without style.
Oh, and that's number 2 for trying to kill Jaws. Thinking they killed Jaws.
They end up going to Stromberg Space, Atlantis, which totally screams, supervillain lives here, and are greeted by Naomi, Stromberg's very hot female henchman.
And now we meet Carolyn Monroe. She is the boat captain here, who is going to take them to meet Carl Stromberg. She's from the Golden Voyage of Sinbad.
And Bond flirts with her. You literally just hooked up with Triple X, someone who probably will sleep with you again. Don't be a jerk, Bond. Don't flirt in front of the other person.
So, Agent Triple X and Agent 007 keep flirting with each other. They are clearly gonna do it and clearly falling for each other. And yet, when Bond sees a woman in a bikini who was sent to pick them up and take them to the bad guy's lair, he turns to Agent Triple X and says, oh.
I think she's one of the most attractive women of all time, but it's an interesting note that she's dubbed, probably because she's not an awesome actress. I thought maybe they were dubbing her because they wanted her to have an Italian or German accent to fit with like the bad guys and the von Stromberg guys, but I don't think that's the case. I think they just had to overdub her because it was no good originally. Anyway, she takes them to the ocean lair.
There are a ton of 007 moments in this movie, but honestly, the entire time, Bond is flirting with women. The entire time. He's even with a current lover and still hitting on someone. That's pretty defining of Bond. This is him in his prime.
What a handsome craft, and such lovely lines. And he's talking about the girl, and it's weird. It's weird.
This whole chunk of the film where Bond first goes to meet Stromberg is very confusing. It takes a lot of time. He's got a fake identity. He goes to meet Stromberg. He identifies a fish. Stromberg shows him a city, and then Bond leaves. And that's kind of the end of it.
Bond proves himself to be an expert on random fish, but honestly, what was the point of the meeting? It lasted all of 4 minutes. You had to go to Italy, rent a hotel room, boat out to the middle of nowhere, and then you leave after 4 minutes.
Here's the weird thing about Stromberg. He doesn't shake James Bond's hand. And the reason for this is that he has webbed fingers. and it doesn't come across very well when you're watching it, but if you really look at his fingers, they're webbed like a duck.
The man with the golden gun provided a very flimsy excuse for why they needed that third nipple, but this film does nothing to justify the webbed hands.
And that's kind of just an interesting side note about it. That's why he doesn't shake people's hands.
Oh, and Stromberg already knew who Bond was, but didn't want to kill him on a completely isolated ocean base. No, let them go to shore. You're a friggin' moron.
This sort of seems to be the point where they wanted to tell you the plot, but then forgot what they were doing, or that there was a plot.
But anyway, they end up at Stromberg's base, and basically he explains that he wants to build a society under the water. He tells Bond that he says, "I wish to conduct my life on my own terms and in surroundings with which I can identify. That is a privilege of wealth." Now, at this point, he is living on a cool, base in the middle of the ocean all by himself. He's got exactly what he wants. He could just leave it there, but no, he's going to try to blow up the world so that he can have a whole underwater city, which he could do anyway, but for some reason he needs to blow up the world to make it happen. Unclear.
But later on, we do learn the reasoning behind this underwater city is somewhat akin to Andrew Ryan's Rapture from the BioShock video game series, which is pretty cool, but again, it goes wholly underdeveloped and is only just kind of quickly whispered, and then they move along to the romance.
Which brings me to my favorite vehicle,
The underwater car.
the submarine car.
Man, Q is kind of in this movie a lot.
They end up going to Italy, where Q gives Bond Wet Nelly.
Now we get the first appearance of the Lotus Spirit. It gets 15 miles per gallon city.
And Triple X is very gracious to Major Booth Road.
So Bond tells Q, "Have I ever let you down?" and drives off. And Q just sits there, shakes his head, and says, "Frequently."
I love Wet Nelly, the 1977 Lotus Esprit.
And the reason it was chosen as the Bond car was because the people from Lotus decided they wanted it to be the next Bond car, so they just parked it outside the offices where they make the Bond movies.
It's a great upgrade to the Aston Martin, and it's about time that Roger Moore actually had a decent car to tool around in. Has rockets, underwater missiles, a smoke screen, cameras. It was fantastic.
Wait, what? Bond just drives off without even thanking Q or checking the manual? I get that he's in a hurry, but really? With all the things that Q does for you, Bond, that is just so disrespectful. Poor Q, man. I'm kind of half surprised he hasn't become a supervillain at this point.
Cue Disco Chase.
So then we have the requisite car chase with a helicopter.
So now we get our requisite chase scene, and I gotta say, this movie really is a letdown in that regard.
Okay, there's a car chase. James Bond is driving the Lotus. He's trying to get away. He's being followed by a motorcycle that launches the sidecar as a rocket.
I don't know what the sidecar rider was trying to accomplish by continuing to ride after launching his bomb. Be it Bond or a semi, if you drive into something that has been very abruptly stopped, you are going to crash.
But accidentally blows up a bunch of chickens, and then the chicken feathers get on his helmet, and he crashes to his death.
A rocket cycle that is the worst thing to aim, and I do like how Jaws takes the gun from the guy behind him after he runs out of ammo. Bond's gadget is concrete foam?
So, this is the big vehicle chase, but it's boring. So first a guy on a motorcycle shows up and he's chasing Bond and the girl, and they just nudge him off a cliff. And then Jaws comes up behind him and has a sedan full of dudes, and they end up pushing a button. Anya actually pushes the button, which is kind of cool that she knows where the buttons are. That sprays some quickset concrete onto their windshield.
Meanwhile, the Hawk Girl comes back, this time as an attack helicopter pilot.
Then Carolyn Monroe shows up in a chopper.
Is it just me, or is he getting some really mixed signals here from that helicopter pilot?
And then there's a helicopter that shows up and chases them, and it's Naomi, the girl, the girl with the handsome craft and the nice lines.
She's trying to kill him, I think, but she also seems like she's trying to flirt with him. So, once again, this goes back to Bond's habit of only dating women that want to kill him.
A second car shows up. He smoke screens them off a cliff and into some old Italian guy's house.
So Jaws' car goes flying off this cliff face and crashes into some poor dude's hut.
Oh, that poor guy's house.
And for the third time, James is pretty sure that he's killed Jaws.
and Jaws walks out the front door of it.
There's so much death in this one. Honestly, both the Russian and British captains are killed in the main battle at the end, but the one that stood out in my notes is the person with the rocket launcher bike when he hits a chicken truck and Bond is like, all those feathers and he still can't fly.
Favorite kill? It would probably be that whole scene with the car chase and then the motorcycle where the guy basically gets tarred and feathered and falls off the side of the mountain. That was the most overtop, and I can't remember the exact details, but there was totally a Bondism little quip. Something like, all those feathers and he still can't fly.
That's a solid dad joke, Bond.
And you get some really cool stunt tracking shots of the chopper chasing Bond around.
Bond escapes by driving his Lotus Esprit off a dock and bam! Instant submarine.
He eventually, in order to lose it, he drives the Lotus off of a dock into the water where it converts into a submarine, and then he uses a surface-to-air missile to blow up the helicopter and Carolyn Monroe.
She's chasing him in a helicopter, and how are they going to get away from her? Bond starts driving down a pier and into the ocean. This part's very cool because the car turns into a submarine.
The submarine model from this, it's a separate vehicle. Obviously, they didn't create a car that could work on land and water, so they created a separate model for the Lotus while it was underwater.
My favorite gadget probably has to be the underwater smoke screen. And Major Amasova, I think that's how you pronounce it, is the one who's just like pressing all the buttons to activate all the gadgets in the car.
The submarine version of this was purchased by Elon Musk for $1 million in 2013 because he wants to build an actual car that can turn into a submarine. So keep your eyes out for that, I guess.
They fight off the helicopter, eventually some divers and a tiny sub, with his blinker on. Seriously, rewind and watch that scene. His right blinker was on.
And he's like, how'd you know where that button was? And she's like, I stole the blueprints for this car 2 years ago, which is very cool. Again, she's competent, independent, like her.
I do like that Triple X tells Bond she stole the blueprints of the car like 2 years before. She was gloating.
And there's this weird, during this whole chase scene, there's this, funky disco track that keeps playing, and it's, totally incongruent with the chase scene. It doesn't work at all. It's just like, I don't know why it's happening, but I hate it.
Okay, I take it back. This is the most 70s Bond movie.
And then they shoot a missile up out of the water and blow up the helicopter, and you're like, all right, cool. And then as they're in the submarine, scuba guys show up, and they have to take out the scuba guys while they're in the submarine. And then after they take them out, a mini sub shows up, and they have to take out the mini sub. So it's this compounding chase scene, but none of the disparate elements are very exciting, and so it just ends up being this long, bland thing where it's like, oh, and then another thing, and then another thing, and then another thing. I don't know, it just doesn't work for me.
Eventually, it comes out that Bond was the one that killed Triple X's lover. Wait, remember this guy? It was only 72 hours before. And she promises to kill James after the mission.
Barbara Bach figures out that Bond killed her boyfriend, and he's like, yeah, that's the job, babe. And she's like, that's fine, we gotta finish this mission, but after the mission, I'm gonna kill you.
Maybe you should go hit on that hotel hostess again, Bond.
So at this point, the relationship between Anya and Bond falls apart, because she realizes, she puts together that James Bond was in the same place that her boo was when he got killed by a British Secret Service agent, and Bond's like, yeah, man, he knew when he got into this line of work that death was a possibility, just like you know that and I know that. And so, yeah, I killed him. He was an enemy agent. And she's like, okay, listen, we're working together, but I am going to murder you when we are done with this. You are going to be a dead person. Good. She should do that. Bond's a bastard.
So from here, they get deployed to a U.S. submarine. The next shot after her saying she's going to kill him is them tied face to face on being lowered into the submarine in this very compromising position, which is a very fun visual gag.
In the following mission, they get on an American sub because I guess the Brits only have their one sub ever. Also, Bond and Anya brought uniform changes because why would you ever have that in your super secret spy mission? Your actual uniform from the military you work for.
They end up finding out that there's this suspicious tanker ship, and they think that's where the problem is, and they hitch a ride on a submarine in order to investigate it.
And it wouldn't be a James Bond movie if they didn't bust on the Americans, so here the entire American crew is basically all perverts, which I guess that tracks.
And there's a totally unnecessary scene where the captain of the submarine's like, "Oh my gosh, Agent Triple X is a girl? You should use my shower, not the communal showers." And she's like, "That's fine." He's like, "No, trust me, you should." And then, but the thing he doesn't tell her is that his shower door doesn't close. So then there's a scene where a guy comes in and the shower door is just open and you can see her standing there, see her naked breasts. Again, nipples, because this movie loves a nipple. And the crewman's like, and the captain's like, "What, man? You've never seen a major showering before?" I don't know, man. Why, like, if you're trying to give her privacy by saying she can use your shower and then you're just going to sit there and watch her shower? That's creepy and weird.
What is a Bond movie without a shower scene? And if I'm not mistaken, we can see a lot more in this shower scene than any other shower scene. Her anatomy is very distinguishable, which does kind of amp up the creep factor.
You know, with the last couple of movies, I kind of half expected Sheriff JW to be on that sub.
Anyway, that lasts all of 5 minutes before they are captured, and whoa, it's the subs and one giant carrier.
So they find the tanker, and oh no, it turns out that what happens to the US sub is the same thing that happened to the British sub. The oh my god is not quite as exciting, but they end up being distracted. The tanker comes up behind them and engulfs the entire submarine into the tanker.
Once we see the sub-eating scene, it dawned on me how much this film is like You Only Live Twice.
So they end up finding the tanker, or I guess rather the tanker finds them, and the whole front of it opens up, just like the spaceship in You Only Live Twice, because at this point, this movie just becomes You Only Live Twice. Again, You Only Live Twice again.
And we get introduced to a really awesome Bond villain lair.
Because the tanker opens up and it takes the submarine inside, and inside they take all the crew from the submarine off and put them into jail cells, just like in You Only Live Twice.
It is a tanker with a huge army of guys in jumpsuits, and they have captured the Soviet and the British sub, and all 3 subs are now kept in this giant tanker holding area.
Anyway, Bond and Triple X are caught, she's taken away, and Bond breaks out the crew that holds her in. Here's some thoughts I had about this whole thing. First, there's no USS Adams as a submarine. 2 points. All US submarines starts with SS and later SSN. Second point, the last USS Adams was a World War II mine carrier.
Also, another slightly off-topic item. I was very excited to learn that in this movie we get to see the 3rd monorail of the Bond series.
They do a pretty cool thing. They plug a hole in the American submarine, and they're like, "Surrender, or we're just going to cyanide gas the entire crew and kill you all." So the crew surrenders, and it turns out that the big evil plan here is that Karl Stromberg is going to take the US and the UK nuclear submarines, and he is going to use them to nuke New York City and Moscow. I don't know why London is spared from this, probably because the people who were making this movie are based out of London, but you're going to take the British sub, and you're going to take the US or the USSR sub, and you're going to nuke America and Russia with it. Okay, fine. He wants to start World War III. Eliminate all life on the Earth, and build a new life of people who live underwater. And it's not an awesome plot. It's not an amazing. He doesn't make like a really great rationalization for why he wants to do this. But it's just kind of nice to have him not just be trying to extort the powers of the world for money. They had to come up with a villain with a big evil lair who had a plot that was not the same plot that we keep seeing in every single episode of James Bond.
So after the breakout, and right as this battlefield scene is getting started, they show the 2 elevators in the ship being in use.
Bond escapes by just kind of flipping a table on some guys, kills a couple guys with a single harpoon, kicks another asshole down a flight of stairs, hijacks a golf cart, machine guns some fools, breaks out the British sub crew, they break out the Russians and the American crews, raid the armory, and then we get an awesome badass gunfight in a hangar.
Also, the Russian Delta class had about 120 people on board. The British Resolution-class sub had 143 people on board, and the American Permit-class submarine had 112 people on board. Now, that's barring any kind of circumstances when they got captured and something happened, but let's just say that's 375 people that Stromberg had to keep around. I mean, he wasn't doing it for money or ransom. Why keep the people around? And then when the crews go to grab guns, it's super convenient. The armory has guns from all of the nations represented. Sten's guns, ARs.
They are using here Sterling Mark IV SMGs, which was the British submachine gun that was in service in 1977. It is also the same gun that the E-11 blaster rifle used by stormtroopers in Star Wars was based off. Prop department added some other stuff on there to make it look a little different, but the basis of the stormtrooper rifle is the Sterling Mark IV submachine guns that are being used by Bond and his guys in this part of the movie. And you see a lot of like weird Star Wars stuff here where, you know, some of the corridors and things that they're in, even like the camera that looks down at them in the submarine hangar has a very like interrogation droid look to it. This movie came out around the same year as Star Wars, so you can see some weird similarities here, and I'm not sure how many of them are coincidental and how many of them are it's just that was the time, and how many of them are on purpose.
And they even have a little indoor training set in their submarine that takes the prisoners to where their jail is, and Bond hops on one of those train tracks, and I swear it's the same hallway that was in You Only Live Twice, just redone with a metallic finish instead of a cave finish.
But can we also talk about how the boat has a monorail?
Favorite car or vehicle? The monorail, of course.
It's the third monorail of the series, this time on a big ship. That's very impressive.
If there's a monorail in a James Bond movie, just count me out. That's my favorite thing.
Also, some mobile camera unit that looks like the droid from Empire Strikes Back. And also, Stanley Kubrick helped design and light the tanker set, which says a lot why it looks like a Spaceballs movie and other large format stereo hangars.
Then he busts them out of the jail cells, just like You Only Live Twice, and then we get a big action scene where it's all the good guys who are prisoners fighting against the bad guys who captured them, just like in You Only Live Twice, and all I was waiting for was for ninjas to show up, but sadly they don't.
I can only imagine Girl from Ipanema playing as they slowly descend upon the battlefield.
Anyway, there's a big fight. The British captain is killed by a grenade. There's so many explosions. Everything's on fire. I really don't think it's a great idea to throw a bunch of hand grenades around a boat, but whatever. It's awesome. It looks cool. They take out the hangar. They retake it from the bad guys in the orange jumpsuits.
Plus at least, I don't know, like 6,200 grenades. There were so many grenades in that fight.
That one dude had just enough time to spout some exposition before he died.
The orange jumpsuits are great because it gives you really good visual differentiation between the good guys and the bad guys, but then they can't get through the final security wall. It's covered with armor plating and heavy machine gun emplacements, so Bond has to take apart a nuke, pull out the detonator, rig it to some C4 and a timer, and blow the wall open.
Bond just played the children's board game Operation with a nuclear bomb.
Then he surfs in on the Imperial interrogation droid, and you get a cool bit where they disconnect the power, and as he disconnects the power to the base, the James Bond music is playing like really loud, and it disconnects the power to the audio at the same time. The audio cuts out very abruptly as he takes out the power.
So we get a full-scale war, but finally the good guys overtake the ship, leaving Bond with 3 minutes to stop 2 missiles from launching from the stolen subs. He then takes time to read the manual, very impressive, because he admits he doesn't know some things. They give new coordinates to the captains, which, let's face it, if the captains from the bad guys understood any coordinates at all, they would realize they would be shooting into the middle of the ocean, or at least in opposite directions of where they're firing.
Okay, they blow the area, they retake the control room, and they set the subs to blow up each other instead of New York City and Moscow. Then they get in the sub and they torpedo their way out of the tanker.
But anyway, boom, bye-bye submarines.
So they end up getting control of the boat, and they end up figuring out that they've got like a minute and a half to stop these missiles or something like that, because one's going to fly and blow up Moscow, one's going to fly and blow up New York. I think it's Moscow, maybe it's London. In any case, they got to figure out how to stop these missiles. There's 2 subs, they got to stop 2 missiles, so what they do is they reprogram them so that the subs shoot atomic warheads at each other instead of at the cities, which is great, except for that James Bond just definitely nuked the Atlantic Ocean twice.
I feel like those nuked subs in the middle of the ocean would be like an ecological disaster.
Now, there's no source I can find for the actual cost to build a nuclear submarine from the 1960s. Something about state secrets and Now my search results are being sent directly to the NSA, but side note, a similar style nuclear submarine, the first, was created about 10 years before at a cost of $55 million. That's $526,181,716 in today's money. This is why the James Bond universe would suck to live in. They keep losing billions of dollars to random villains every 3 or 4 years.
Poor fishies.
The speedboat launcher that launches you out of the tanker into a speedboat is kind of awesome, but it seems real dangerous.
So the ship explodes, leaving Bond and the girl in a boat. Wait, no, that's the American captain, not a girl in a boat.
The United Nations says to blow up the Atlantis, which is Karl Stromberg's secret underwater lair. But James gets the American commander to give him 1 hour to get in there and get Commander Anna? He says it wrong, which makes it a little bit difficult. I think he says Anya, which I think the Russian pronunciation would be Anya. I don't know. Barbara Bach. He's got to get her off the Atlantis before the Americans blow it to hell.
Now, at this point, they have destroyed the enemy submarines, they've destroyed the tanker that was the control center for the submarines, and orders are given to destroy Atlantis, Stromberg's little island, his water-based getaway place, which is, not an imminent threat to anybody, but they've been given orders to destroy it immediately, and Bond ends up bargaining for an hour. He gets 1 hour to try and save the girl because she got abducted.
Then Bond takes something called a wet bike to the base from the submarine that was hilarious to look at.
We get the first appearance of a jet ski in a movie, I think. I don't know, but it's called the wet ski or something like that, and it's weird, but, pretty cool.
But it was the first prototype of the actual wet bike was going to debut a year later, right before jet skis. I mean, we're talking about 10 years before.
Bond gets more Q gadgets?
And he hops on this little Q-Labs jet ski that was in a bag, and he assembles it and then rides his jet ski over and goes to save the day.
Especially after the thing with the car, I'm a little surprised that Q's still willing to put up with him.
Bond gets to the base.
But oh no, Stromberg's gonna have him get in the elevator.
Doesn't fall for the shark tank trap in the elevator.
In typical James Bond fashion, he just drives straight in there and allows himself to be captured. Then, the bad guy tries to drop him into the shark tank. Bond outwits him.
And he pushes the button to drop him in the shark tank, but James Bond planted his feet on the side of the elevator, so it didn't work.
What's up with Bond villains and their Tabasco sauce? This seems to be a running theme. Has anyone else noticed this?
The bad guy tries to shoot him with a giant comical grenade gun launcher underneath his massive Bruce Wayne dinner table.
And so then Stromberg's like, well, James, have a seat at the end of this exceedingly long table. No reason at all. But, what's that? He's got a harpoon gun under the table, right at crotch height. And so he grabs onto the harpoon gun while James sits down and he fires the harpoon gun. But James sees it.
But Bond dodges the explosion.
And he dodges out of the way. And then James puts his gun in the barrel of this long harpoon gun tube. It's pointed back at the harpoon gun. It's right at Stromberg's crotch level, and he shoots him in the junk multiple times.
Shoots Stromberg twice in the dick, twice in the heart, and escapes.
Bond, I think you got him.
Last movie, James Bond threatened to shoot that guy in the junk. This movie, he straight up shoots a dude in the junk over and over again.
Kills Stromberg in no time at all. Just boom, couple shots to the body, done.
He kills the bad guy by shooting him in the junk. James, what is wrong with you? You need help.
5 bullets is kind of overkill.
So the day is saved because they beat the bad guy and everything's gonna be fine. Oh no, it's Jaws because they didn't actually kill him.
He goes looking for Anya, but Jaws is there.
So James gets into this cool fight with Jaws. Well, I mean, it's okay.
Bond vs. Jaws, round 3. Fight.
But he has to fight Jaws on the way out.
Jaws blocks a bullet with his teeth, which is pretty cool. And at this point, I'm realizing that one of the things that makes Jaws such a great bad guy and just super creepy is that he, not only does he not talk at any point during this movie, he doesn't make any noise at all. He doesn't even make a sound when he gets, punched and stuff. He doesn't talk. It's creepy.
Defeating him with a magnet to the face. You'd think his jaws would be titanium, but not steel? Whatever.
So James and Jaws are fighting all over the base. They're going through doors and stuff, and they end up in the shark tank. And James uses a magnet to pick Jaws up by his teeth and move him over the shark tank and drop him down. And that's the 4th time that James Bond thinks that he killed Jaws. But he didn't because Jaws bites the shark.
Anyway, Bond kicks Jaws in the dick, mashes his face with a huge magnet, and drops him into a tank of man-eating sharks, all while making the cool guy smiles and one-liners. But of course, Jaws kills the other Jaws by biting a damn shark.
And then he kills it.
I loved every time that Jaws walks away from death or something that kills somebody else, he then adjusts his tie or does something completely humanizing. He even fought off the shark in the shark tank, like some Jaws on Jaws crime.
Jaws had the potential to be a much better villain. The one thing they did right is that this guy is unkillable, but that is it. There's no character, there's nothing fancy about him, and I don't think he makes a single sound through the entire film.
I like Jaws'... Jaws?
Interesting note about Jaws' teeth, they were actually designed by Stanley Kubrick's stepdaughter, and they are currently on display in the Spy Museum in Washington, D.C.
I wonder if his face and, muscles are upgraded, though, because sharp teeth doesn't mean you can just chew through metal locks and stuff. You need some force behind it.
He could be kind of like Baron Samedi, or even Teehee, or the Russian from Russia with Love, who just keeps on going. But as it stands, he has about as much personality as a hammer.
Also, does nobody else work on Atlantis right now? You left all your guards on the other ship? Bold move, Stromberg.
I wouldn't say Carl Stromberg is my favorite villain, but he got me started to think about something. Once they blew up the 2 subs, was there not any other part of this plan? And for that matter, do any of the bad guys from the previous movies not have any plan Bs or follow through?
I think Stromberg really didn't think out his plan. He was just like, let's start a war and then maybe live underwater. Dude, you still need the underwater base to go to. You can't just assume people want to join you after the nuclear war.
I'm really confused. Mainly because they tell Bond all of the details. But I feel like there should be more. There should be a second step, not just let's bomb these cities. What about Stromberg's underground water city? Is it exist somewhere? I'm gonna have to keep an eye on this for the upcoming movies, because these plan A's with no plan B's or C's are just becoming a trend in Bond movies.
While this is happening, Bond saves the girl and escapes, and the place is being blown up with torpedoes. We get a lot of gratuitous Barbara Bach in a bikini shots.
Bond rescues Triple X.
Bond knows his time is up. It's been about an hour. The base is getting attacked by the submarine. Everything's blown up. There's water rushing everywhere, so they hop in an escape pod, which is a sex bed.
They end up blasting out of there in an escape pod full of scotch and champagne.
They escape in a sexscape pod.
It's just that the whole escape pod is a bed filled with pillows and a bottle of Dom Perignon 52 next to it.
There are a lot of really good gadgets in this movie, but my favorite is the escape pod at the end of the movie.
I'm sorry, it's a soft white couch with a bottle of 1952 Dom Perignon. That's a sexscape pod.
Especially during this whole COVID-19 thing, how do I get one and where do I get one? That would be the perfect vacation. It's like your own little cruise ship.
And Bond is like, perhaps I misjudged him. Anyone who drinks Dom Perignon 52 can't be that bad.
Today you can buy a bottle of that same Dom Perignon for about $1,200. Not too bad.
And he's like, hey, don't point that gun at me, Triple X. And she's like, the mission's over. Remember how I said I was going to murder you? And he's like, yeah, but Dom Perignon? And she shoots the bottle and opens it. Not destroys it. Shoots the cork off.
Bond talks her out of vengeance by seducing her.
Once Bond and Anya are in the little escape pod, she leans over to kiss him in her dress, and it kind of looks like there's dye on the sheets. I'm not sure, but it seemed like it was the same color as her dress.
Man, that is one fancy escape pod.
The Major ends up not wanting to kill Bond and has sex with him instead.
And then they totally get ready to have sex because she's like, oh, I've forgiven you for killing my boyfriend. It's cool. Let's have sex. What will our bosses think?
Everybody's happy. They get busted by the Royal Navy making out, which is just kind of par for the course for James Bond.
Bond is like, oh, they'll never know. It's fine. And as he's saying that, they're being pulled into a tanker that has both M and the Russian equivalent of M on it, looking through a window into the sex escape pod. And rather than being like, oh, our bad, James just closes the blinds and then has sex while everyone stands there and listens to him.
And it turns out that Jaws has lived. And Richard Kiel, the actor who plays Jaws, he did an interview about like watching it in the theaters, and he said in this scene where Jaws arrives at the surface and swims away, he said everybody in the audience started applauding, and he just made him like feel awesome.
The film is still longer than it needs to be.
The one thing I'd change about this movie, I'm kind of over the underwater fight scenes. I can't remember if this is the second or third one, but they're just so hard to follow, and you can't tell who's the good guys and who's the bad guys. And I can only hope it's the last one in the series. But this is the same series that's had 3 different monorails and 3 different movies, so anything is possible.
Rather than unnecessarily extend my review like this film, I'll cut to the chase. Speaking of chases, there are a lot of those. There are also many instances where the director feels the need to inform the viewer of everyone's actions and whereabouts. The first 3 that come to mind are the time spent watching Max Kalba walk to the phone. We watch the entire route, including him getting slowed by a patron. Secondly, the entire ship-to-ship missile launch experience. Lastly, rather than leaving Jaws' survival from the shark and base explosion to the viewer's discretion, we are shown every instance. I'm half surprised he didn't sit with each character like a reality TV show and ask their opinion on the current events. Now for a compliment on this problem. There are some very stellar instances of choreography in this film. Quite a few still and motion scenes alike caught my attention. Bond first entering the ruins, the upward shot of Jaws in the same scene, and the helicopter seamlessly appearing in the mountain race scene. They would have had greater effect if everything else was easier to consume.
This is another Bond movie without many personal gadgets. I mean, he has his dumb watch in the beginning, sure, and his wet bike, but he just got in fights and had guns and was a spy.
And that's it. That's The Spy Who Loved Me. I'd never actually seen this movie before, and it owns way harder than I was expecting. It is a huge recommendation from me. I thought it was great. It's a little dated and cheesy, but like that's part of the appeal of it. I think this movie kicked ass, and I had a really awesome time being here.
So yeah, that's The Spy Who Loved Me. It's like, what if James Bond was a romantic comedy? I think it's incredibly dull. I did not like this one. I mean, there's some cool imagery. The submarine car is very cool. The bad guy's base is very cool, but it's just, I don't know, man. It just didn't do it for me. The chase scene was boring. The action scene felt like a rehash.
Q Bond on a boat with a girl, but this time they have a chorus version of the theme song. Amazing.
And then at the end, just in case this movie wasn't weird enough, well, first of all, we do have to call it out. Bond in a boat with a girl, but also some crazy version of the theme song plays that's awful.
Nobody does it better.
Oh, what a weird way to end it. I don't know. Spy Who Loved Me didn't do it for me. Jaws is cool.
Once again, Bond kills the villain, the world is saved, and he makes out with a girl on a boat.
We'll see Jaws again in the next movie, so stick around for Moonraker. Thanks, guys.
James Bond will return in For Your Eyes Only. Wait, nope, that was a mistake by the studio. James Bond will actually return in Moonraker. Thanks, Star Wars, for doing really well.
Podcasters Assemble Season 003 is a production of the We Can Make This Work Probably podcast network. Find more of our shows at probablywork.com and learn how to contribute to future episodes of Podcasters Assemble by looking us up on Twitter at Casters Assemble or joining our Discord server, link in the show notes. Submissions are always open. Thank you to everyone who was able to contribute to this episode. Be sure to check the show notes for links where you can find them all online. Thank you.
This has been a presentation
of the We Can Make This Work
Probably Network.
Follow us on Twitter
@ProbablyWork for more of our questionable content.
Also, we have a website called probablywork.com.
Podcasters Assemble will return in
Moonraker.